Well, hi there, and welcome to the break room. Listen, now let me ask you, we start with our good questions. So, the first question I want to ask you, have you ever said, you know what, I am too drained after work to go to the gym? Or have you said, you know what, after an unpredictable schedule or, things going on with your work life, that you know what, you just don't have time for any organized activities. Have you ever said either one of those or something around that? Well, you know what? As we think about it, that may be a sign that that is an all or nothing way of thinking. So we're going to get into it today, all or nothing thinking as a multi-passionate nurse. So again, welcome to the break room. This is your nurse self-care safe space for you to escape from your day-to-day and come in here and listen. You get refreshed, renewed, and recharged, and then you can return back to the task that you have at hand. And I am Deetra Dennis. I am the self-care coach for nurses. And what I do, I empower the multi-passionate nurse to prioritize the care of her MVP. Yes, you are your most valuable patient. And so that you can show up as the best version of yourself and impact the well-being of those connected to you. And so I'm so glad to have you here with us. Now, before we get into, all or nothing thinking as a multi-passionate nurse, just want to go over a little housekeeping like we normally do. And this is for anyone that this is your first time, welcome. And for those of you that have been around for a while, thank you for coming back. So if you're viewing on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, again, thank you and welcome. So on YouTube, I just want to invite you to become a part of the family and subscribe to the channel. And you can click on the notification bell so you can receive alerts when I post a new video or when I go live or when I post in the community. So again, do that. I would love for you to do that. And across the board, I would love for each of you to like this video and share it with someone who you feel could benefit from the things that we talk about here in the break room. And lastly, I would love to see your comments. And I really do appreciate the comments that I have received. And listen, I know some of you say, listen, I'm not a nurse, but I really like the information that you share. And again, thank you for staying tuned. And many of you have said you shared it with others. And yes, I do speak to nurses, but this information that we share over here in the break room, everyone can benefit from. So again, thank you so much for doing that, and continue to comment in the chat so that we can have a dialogue. So without further ado, let's get into an all or nothing thinking as a multi-passionate nurse. So, I love to level set so that we can be right here and talking to each other and be on the same on the same page, singing from the same sheet of music. Sounds good? All right, so let's get into it. So we're going to define all or nothing thinking. So Collins Dictionary defines it as to say that either something must be done fully or completely, or else it cannot be done. Have you ever said that or even thought that way? And so many times that way of thinking is the most common barrier that keeps many people from achieving or maintaining and or sustaining a healthy way of living. So I feel that it's important for us to talk about it and even go a little deeper into what are some dangers of having an all or nothing way of thinking. And because really what it is like it's either black or white, right? It's no gray areas. And we also talked about this a little bit in the video, or when we did it live, we did it and it was called self-care, practicing self-care guilt-free. And we talked about the dualistic thinking, meaning is or, rather than thinking of or, that's dualistic, and we want to have more of a growth mindset, meaning and. So and if you're watching on YouTube, I will have that in the description below, the link to that video. But anyway, that is kind of what the all or nothing is black or white, no gray in between. And some of the words that are used when it comes to an all or nothing way of thinking is things are always this way, or we'll never have it different. This is just the way it is. It's like a black or white way of thinking. And so again, I wanted to share with you 3 ways that of thinking this way could be a little harmful to us. And many times it impacts the way you show up or in your relationships with others, as well as with yourself. So one of the dangers of having an all or nothing thinking is you have decreased motivation, or it could be procrastination. And how does that come into play with the all or nothing thinking? Is that many times, and listen, we have high standards, and sometimes it's unrealistic. And if things are not, let's say, 100% the perfect, if you will not get started, or we will not get started in something if we're not 100% sure it's going to turn out the way we want it to. And have you ever thought that way? Type in the chat if you have. Type yes if you have thought that way. Like, okay, if it's not going to be 100%, I'm not going to do it. And so a way to overcome that is to be flexible, right? So it's so important to do that, and also understand when things, if it's not 100% the way you want it, it's an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow and develop. And so I will share 2 experiences where I started out having the all or nothing thinking, and then had to sit back and reflect and say, okay, well, how can we have a different perspective on it? So one of most recent, I have had a change in my schedule. So, we've been doing the break room for about 8 months now, maybe a little longer. But I think it's been about 8 months. And so, we've been doing it live. And so my schedule has changed with work, as well as, I'm working and then offering my business as well. And so things have changed. So I'm not able to do it live all the time. I may have periods where I will do present live, but I had to sit back because initially I was like, okay, well, I won't be able to do the break room anymore because things have changed. And I had to sit back and just reflect. Now, I know that this is making an impact in others' lives from the comments that have been shared. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't just, it's not an all or nothing. Either it's this way or nothing. So I had to sit back and think, okay, well, what if I record the videos and we still will have our time together? Because if you're commenting in the chat, I do follow up and respond. So it's still a way for us to, for me to be of service to you, right? And we still have the break room. So that was how I overcame having the all or nothing. Meaning if I wasn't able to do it live, I just wasn't going to do it at all. But being able to sit back and think of it in a different way, how can I still be of service and provide the information that I share? So here we are. We have recorded videos. One other was I want to say it probably has been maybe a year or so ago, and I was launching a workshop, and there were some things going on behind that I had never done before, but I didn't want that to stop me. But initially I was like, well, I can't do it, so we're not going to do it. Again, I had to sit back and reflect, and as well, I have coaches, supporting me on this journey, in building and expanding my business. And so, we kind of work through some things and what I could do and what I wasn't able to do, reaching out for support. And so again, that helped me overcome that all or nothing way of thinking, because hey, we all get to that point, but it's important that we have tools so that we can change that perspective. So number one is that it causes you to decrease your motivation, because I was getting to the point where I wasn't motivated to do it. or procrastinated because it wasn't perfect. So overcome that by being flexible and lean in to things not being perfect. All right. Second is we have trouble asking others for help. And that was one of the things I overcame, as I shared before. But many times we have trouble asking for help, especially as a multi passionate nurse, because we feel like we can do all the things. But listen, we it's okay to ask for help. And many times, again, our way of thinking is that in order for it to get done well, you're the only person that can do it, or you want to have 100% control of the situation. If Look in the chat, if you're able to use the emoji hand emojis, put that in the chat. Because listen, that was me. If I felt like if I couldn't do it, it just couldn't get done. That's that all or nothing way of thinking. So how we overcome that is, again, delegate. And you want to delegate responsibly, making sure that whoever you're assigning the task to, that they're able to, complete the task. And listen, don't be hovering over them, because they're going to do it their way. It may not be your way, but the ultimate goal is for them to, whatever that outcome is that they meet that outcome or meet that goal or meet that objective, right? That is the goal. It may not be how you do it, but again, as long as it is done. And, take joy in being able to share that with someone else for them to take on the task, because it could be a blessing for them to grow and develop as well. Okay. So that was number 2, trouble asking others for help. That is an all or nothing way of thinking. And lastly, this one is, I'm just going to say it. We have less self-compassion. Listen, we can have compassion for everyone else, but many times when it comes to ourselves, we are very critical. Say for instance, you've been working on your self-care goals, and then you have a few days that you may fall off. And then you're at a point where you're like, okay, you know what? I just won't be able to accomplish this right now. So you just give up and just don't move forward with your self-care goals. Well, listen, your worth and your performance are not tied together. You can still do it. You can still do it. Just get back on track. Listen, life happens and slips happen, but we just don't want to go down the slope, because when you go down the slope, sometimes it's hard to get back up, right? So it's okay if you fall off, just get back on track. Okay. And this quote really stood out when I was thinking about this, and it's by Brene Brown. And she says, talk to yourself like you would to someone you love. So how are you talking to yourself? Are you speaking lovely of yourself, speaking well of yourself? Are you doing that? Let's overcome that all or nothing thinking so that we can improve self-love and also self-compassion. So as a recap, the 3 dangers of having that all or nothing thinking, or that black or white way of thinking and no gray areas. Number 1, the first danger is it decreases your motivation and increases procrastination. How about that? And we don't want that. We want to be able to step into those things that we are to do so that we can show up as the best version of ourselves. And we want to be motivated, because how we show up to others matter, right? We know that in our everyday life as a multi-passionate nurse. And then the second one, the danger of having an all or nothing thinking, is that we have trouble asking others for help. So we're going to overcome that and ask for the support that we need to complete a task or whatever it may be. And then lastly, is with the all or nothing way of thinking, you have less self-compassion. And let's show ourselves some love, because is love our neighbors as ourselves. So that means we love us first so that we can show up again as the best version of ourselves. So that's all I have for us today. So I would love to hear in the chat from you, what are some ways that you've recognized an all or nothing way of thinking in yourself, and how Were you able to overcome them, or how did you, or how do you overcome that way of thinking? And we have our quote, but before I get to the quote, I just want to remind you to like this video. And again, comment below. I really would love to hear your thoughts about the all or nothing way of thinking, and share it with others. And so our quote for tonight is, when you change your thinking, you change actions. When you change your actions, you change your future. So with that said, I am so grateful again for you showing up and viewing this video today. And I look forward to seeing you on next week, or speaking with you all next